Hi, I'm Jessica Johns. This is episode 2, the Declaration of Independence. Grab those documents, grab your notebook, let's go through this together, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. So let's talk about the leading period before the Declaration of Independence in 1776. We have to understand that the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War, has allotted the British a tremendous amount of debt. And the British institute the first direct tax on the American colonies, the Stamp Act. And there's a pushback, and there's boycotts, and new laws, and taxes, the closing of the Boston Harbor. In response to all of this, the First Continental Congress will be assembled in 1774. At this point, most colonists were loyal to the king and to England. Talk about independence was growing. Talk about American nationalism or separation is treason. So what happened to lead to the drafting of the Declaration of Independence in 1776? Well, continued disagreement over taxes and control of the markets continued to be an issue. Up until this point, the British colonies here in America were under the control of the British. But the 13 colonies acted with much economic independence and amassed a lot of wealth. The American colonies were the freest and wealthiest in the world, and this system had been shaken by the French and Indian War. Fighting initially broke out in 1775. The 13 colonies were not united with increasing tension, and others really asked what was the point of all of this military action. It's in June of 1776 that Richard Henry Lee from Virginia makes a move for independence, and a committee of 5 men are assembled to draft a document for independence. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Ben Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Jefferson is the youngest at this point, 33 years old, and most well known for the written word, and he is tasked with the writing of the Declaration of Independence. When Thomas Jefferson writes the Declaration, we can see within his words that he's heavily influenced by John Locke, specifically John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, written in 1690, that justifies the Glorious Revolution of 1689 in England. And the concept here that we can really see is that people can revolt against a government that does not protect their natural rights. And so the Declaration has a purpose to throw off this government that is not protecting rights. It becomes the American creed and announces the motives during this Revolutionary War that we intend to separate from Great Britain. Yes, the fighting had begun in 1775, but this document written by Jefferson in 1776 announces the divorce, the intention to separate. The Declaration claims separation. It claims the universal principles of liberty, equality, and self-government. It declares that natural rights come from God, not from government. The first is the preamble and the Declaration of Rights, which is really the Declaration's introduction. The second is the list of grievances against King George III. And the third part is the Statement of Rights. So in this very first part of the Declaration of Independence, we see the U.S. is going to dissolve from Great Britain. That's the purpose. We are going to separate and to impel us to separate. The second paragraph, we hold these truths to be self-evident, is the Declaration of Rights, and the government is created to protect them. When the government fails, people have the right to abolish it. And as we move down here into the second part, it starts with the he. He has refused. He has forbidden. He has refused. He is called together. And it goes on to the next page here as I scroll through all the he. He's an absolute tyrant over the states. The royal governors have rejected colonial laws that they didn't have a case against. They are suspending their operation, for instance. They're not giving new boundaries of legitimate legislative districts to ensure new settled areas are represented. They are dissolving colonial legislatures and all these different things that they're attributing directly to the king. They don't see the legitimacy of Parliament if they have no representation in Parliament. Thus, their grievance is directly with the King of England. Here's what you've done wrong, whether that's you directly, our previous monarchs, or in somehow the Parliament. Because we don't have representation, our grievance goes directly against the monarch, the head of state. And now here, this last section is what will we do? Britain is an enemy. Britain, we are at war with you because you are already at war with us. We are fighting back. So Congress is making an appeal to God as the supreme judge. And in the name of people, we are declaring in this document that the colonies are free, that they no longer have allegiance to the British crown, that they are going to dissolve all political connections to the British, and that now these 13 colonies should be recognized as free and independent states. So now they have the full power to levy war. They have the full power to conclude peace. They have the full power to establish commerce. And that's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful because there's already a war going on. And now we're seeing the justification outlined for this war and the intent that we, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, appeal to the supreme judge of the world, right? And that we ought to be totally dissolved as political alliance or as under the thumb of the monarchs. By providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And this is going to be a rallying cry for the patriots who are currently not doing really well against the British. But now it gives them purpose and the intent. We're not fighting for Britain to fix what's wrong with the system. We are fighting to create our own independent system. And it's going to have many signers from all areas: New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Delaware, Georgia, Maryland. Right? They're all going to sign and say, hey, we are united and together breaking away from you. So some discussion questions. What are unalienable rights? Why did Jefferson, the people, the founders, feel obligated to declare the causes for separation from Britain? In the second paragraph, it says that we have certain rights. How are these rights secured? What 4 things should free and independent states do? Was it necessary for all 13 colonies to unanimously declare independence? Is the Declaration still revered today? This is Social Studies with Mrs. Johns.